Hello everyone, I'm Melanie French, the CEO of RR Living. In this episode of RREAF Academy, we'll explore one of the most critical transitions in real estate, and that's what happens after the deal closes. We'll cover the key steps involved and how we ensure as managers that every single asset is positioned for performance and for driving revenue on day one. Let's get started. So first, I want to say thank you very much for attending and for joining us today and giving us your time out of the middle of your day, because we know how busy everybody is, and to have the opportunity to speak to all of you is a real honor for us and something that we enjoy. I'm Melanie French, and I actually lead our RR Living team, which is the property management team that falls under RREAF Holdings. So today, what they've asked me to speak on is to really tell you a little bit about property management and somewhat about the fact of you go in, you buy an asset, what happens after that? How do you make sure that your asset is going to make the money it should? So we're going to talk about several things. I'm not going to stick solely to the script. I have taken and put more information on the slides than what we'll cover. I did that so that when you have this deck and later in life you want to go back and look up some of the parts of what was property management and what did I learn, you'll have enough detail in the slides that you can do that. We will talk about what property management is. Property management in general, it is the team that is responsible for really maximizing the revenue on any asset that's purchased. That's whether it is commercial, industrial, build to rent single family homes, multifamily, townhomes. Any type of property that is managed is going to have somebody responsible for property management. The property management team is the one that is responsible as well for ensuring that the owner's business plan is adequately executed on. Because if we don't do our job in property management, then the ownership is not going to make the money that they envision making, and that sends the wrong message to the investors, and then later does not give us the value out of the asset that we have predicted. I want to tell you why this business matters and why what you're here today talking about and why you're here at RREAF Holdings, why does that matter? Well, the reality is that when you own multifamily real estate, it's not just simply a job. We have to remember that we are providing housing for people. Our residents will spend most of their paycheck goes towards their housing. In some cases, that's 30% of their total earnings. And in many cases in today's world, that can be up to 50% of their earnings. Their largest expenditure is their housing. But when you provide housing, you are providing that home where they raise their children, they have their families come over, they make the memories that are so crucial as children are growing up. And when you do that, you want the residents to have somewhere that they're proud to live in. And that's where we come in. So we don't look at our job as simply managing a building with four walls. We look at it as though we're providing housing, and we are helping the families that live with us have a home they can be proud of and somewhere to raise their children. And let's talk about what we do. At RR Living, we don't just manage properties. As I said, we elevate communities. We empower our residents and our people. And we do so with purpose and with intentionality, because it's not just a building. And I'm going to remind you of that several times during this, because when you come in and you think about what you're doing, and I would urge every one of you to go out, spend a few days working side by side in the field with some of our team, and you'll be surprised at the many memories that you make. So it is important that we treat every community we have as though we were the individual owner. I make the same decisions on communities now that we manage as I would make if it was my personal millions in that asset, because that's what it's really about. We believe that every single detail matters, from the time that you greet the prospect to how we treat them during their residency, and then into the financial decisions of how we take care of our communities. We'll talk more about that later as we go through some of the ways that you can make money and why some of the decisions are good and why some decisions that you think would be good may not bring the return you thought. But one of our roles in property management is to actually provide knowledge and information to the ownership and to the acquisition team. So when I think of a life cycle of an asset, and by asset, our communities can cost anywhere from 30 million to these days upwards of 100+ million. The communities can range anywhere from $20,000 a unit, which is on the very low side, okay? If you were gonna buy something that you really would be afraid to walk into, that's your $20,000 a unit, okay? But many assets now in key cities are actually selling for $300,000 and $400,000 per apartment. This is not a business for the faint of heart. You start off the life cycle of an asset by doing your due diligence, doing the underwriting, and creating that business plan. From there, once you purchase it, we are asked to manage it. That's the daily operations, taking care of the management, taking care of the service. But then, after we've achieved the NOI, at some point, you are going to sell that asset or you're going to refinance it. And every time the underwriting is done, I believe some of you heard from Ryan last week. Good. So you would have heard from Ryan that when you go into a purchase, you already are calculating out what your return is going to be when you sell that asset and at what point in that life cycle. The fourth stage is really all about the profit that you've earned. And that is a stage on its own in my mind, because what that means is that if we've done it right, that profit that you have received off of that one community will then help you and your organization build wealth. It'll build investor confidence, and it then, if we've done our jobs well, the investors want to give us more money and reinvest with us. So anytime Ryan and Jack and Charlotte and the asset management team are looking to refinance or sell, one of the first things they'll tell us is you have to keep the economic occupancy up. You have to keep the physical occupancy up. And that's because even though you're in the exit strategy, you're still very much in a formulation of being able to increase that value. It does not stop. Then we're going to talk about how property management interacts and partners with the acquisition teams and the other teams that are so critical. We get involved before the acquisition ever occurs. And because we work in an organization where we have great partnership, you can think of it almost as a four-legged stool. You've got the acquisitions team, you've got the property management team, the construction team, and the asset management team. So those four groups will always work together, which is critical for success. So the acquisitions team will find an asset they're interested in. They go through the process Ryan showed you. They do the underwriting, and then they bring us in. But the purpose of bringing in the property management at that point in time is to get our guidelines and our thoughts on a specific market, on the asset itself, because we, on the property management side, are the market experts. We're the ones that are out there every day with our teams in the trenches, living and learning the employers in the area, knowing what the competition is doing, knowing and learning and seeing which floor plans will actually sell the best. What are the things that residents are telling us now on communities that are the reason they don't lease, or what made them want to lease? So with that, we go in and we will talk to the acquisitions team. We drive through the comps, we go in, we look at every floor plan, we talk through at that time, what do we think would work to drive value and add oomph, if I can use that word. We want the oomph, because that oomph is what it is that makes people walk into that home and say, oh my gosh, I love this floor plan. I've got to live here. That's what you want. So we are the ones that are going to look at whether or not we recommend renovating and upgrading. And to do that, you have to understand these questions. And this is how you determine that return on your investment. If you renovate, is it going to be appropriate to that market? So say, for example, you have a community where your rent is only $650 a month. If you go in and you spend $15,000 renovating a home in that market, do you think you're going to be able to raise that rent to $900? Probably not. So that's where we come in to determine, is it appropriate to that market and is it appropriate to the competition? When we do a market study, we actually will do it two ways. My team will look at the market study based on what units we have today and what the rent is in the current competitors, and then we do it a second way. And I would urge each of you to do this in the future. Look at the competitors that you want to be like. If you're going to go in with a full renovation, look at the competitors that are brand new in that market and look at where your rents are going to be post-renovation. And what you'll see is that your rents pre-renovation and post-renovation should change strongly and take you into that next segment of competition. And you want to be just below usually the highest priced, because we're not going to be brand new, but we're going to make it feel new. And that's your key. We want to look at how many renovations can we do a month, and that's not just can we do, but it involves the planning of how many people are moving out already, the notice to vacates, because the longer it takes us to do a renovation, for example, if we could do 4 or 5 units a month on a 300-unit property, it could take us 24 months to renovate. Well, folks, we do not get that increased rate for the owners and investors until after we renovate. So we want to renovate faster because that arc goes like this. And so you're starting off with your rents here. When you renovate, it's almost like going up that mountain and that hill. And you want that arc of income to come faster, because then you're going to have higher income for the next 3 years that you own it. What we're also going to talk about is whether or not you know what you're doing and why it's important to do a due diligence. While this slide is very hard to see, it gives you an example of some of the underwriting pieces where the construction team goes in, they estimate everything that needs to be done. So they're going to go in and tell you, for example, I'm going to put a placeholder on roofs because we need to replace 4 roofs. We're going to spend this much. You want to do all that early in the process. We'll work with the acquisitions team and the construction team when we're out there to talk about that. This is not let's just go throw money at it. It's let's make the decision. And sometimes that decision is not the one you would expect. I want to talk to you a little bit about why sometimes spending money in the front is better later. These are some examples of that. Next time you drive through an apartment community, keep your eyes open and look at the windows, okay? I know that sounds crazy, folks, but really, oftentimes you'll see mini blinds, and as you drive through a community, if you look, you'll notice they're all broken, or people have blankets in the windows. That subliminally tells your customer a certain message. So when we go in, we want to put in the 2-inch faux wood blinds. There are a couple of reasons for that. We spend more upfront doing that, but they are less likely to get broken. Right now, if a pet cat looks through the window with mini blinds, they're breaking the mini blinds, okay? And your team will spend time to go in and fix them. So from my standpoint, I'm saying that if I'm paying a service or maintenance person $28 an hour, do I really want them spending 30 minutes and $14 to replace a blind? No, I want to limit that. I don't want them to do that 200 times a year. So we'll spend money up front to put in the nicer blinds, That cuts down on maintenance costs, but what it also does, when you do it up front in an acquisition, it gives your residents that are already there something that they perceive they get for free. That's an important factor, because when I go in and take over a new asset, I know day one, we're going to be probably increasing that rent $200 plus over the next year. When we do that and you go in and your current resident has seen nothing change, they don't like that. So we have to give them a subliminal feeling that something has changed for free. Then you've got things like doing the carpeting versus the laminate flooring. Carpet is much cheaper. We can usually carpet an entire apartment for about $1,500. When we do the laminate floor, it's going to run us $2,500 or $2,600. We use a laminate that is planks. And the reason we do that is because when a resident damages a plank, we can pop it out and replace it without having to replace the entire apartment. We also will typically replace carpet every 2 to 3 years if an apartment turns over. People do not take care of it. We do not use high-end carpet in an apartment because we know the wear and tear. So we are very much trying to get away from carpet, but it requires your owner to spend more money up front. And it's a good bit more money, okay? That's why it's important that you understand that the short-term expense can save you money over the next 3 years. One of the things that we're looking at now is, for example, where you've got laminate countertops. We're looking at going with a 2 cm or a 3 cm hard surface like a granite. When you have a B asset or a C asset, residents aren't always as careful as you would like them to be when they cook, and they will burn the laminate, or they will stain it, or they will cut on it because they aren't using a cutting board. When that happens and they move out, we have to replace it or we have to resurface it. Resurfacing is a waste of money, okay? Go in, shop some properties, go look at them, and learn more about why you're here at RREAF Holdings and what we're living with. When you put in a hard surface like a granite, even one that's on the lower scale cost-wise, it means that I'm not going to have to replace that countertop, chances are, through the entire time we own that community. The reason for the deadbolt and passage versus a deadbolt and a keyed knob is because if you've got a deadbolt and a keyed knob, that means I have to have 2 keys. It means my team has to rekey 2 locks. If I put a passage, it also forces the resident to use the deadbolt. And many times if they have 2 locks, they won't. And it's very easy to break in to a keyed lock. The deadbolt is going to have no knob and a keyed lock that you can only lock or unlock on one side with a key. Due diligence on the property management side is something that Marissa has run for us for several years. And it means that in addition to visiting the asset that we talked about already, my team is going to go in and plan to do a full 100% unit by unit inspection. My team will take a photo of every single room in that apartment home. We will take a photo of each appliance. We will take photos of the flooring. So what it gives us is a good record going in of what we're buying. We will note if there are sheetrock damage, if there are leaks in that apartment, so that our team knows when they go in what they're going to have to fix. But it also enables us as the property management experts to help build that budget with the acquisition team and make it a budget that is real. By going in and finding those things before you ever purchase the asset, sometimes it enables the acquisition team to go back and retrade on the price and get a discount, because up front, we know we've got to go in and remediate this. We're going to inspect all the mechanicals. We should know whether or not they have gas heat exchangers, and that's important because when you use a heat exchanger that is gas, some of them aren't made anymore and you can't get parts. So we need to be able to advise the acquisition team, hey, when you buy this, you're not going to be able to repair these. So we need to estimate X percentage for replacement. We look at things as simple and small as whether or not your water heater has a pan under it. Because if it does, it will catch water if it starts leaking. If it doesn't, and you have a leak, it's going to flood your belongings and your apartment. You'll find code differs. Some areas, for example, North Carolina requires you to have a carbon monoxide detector, whether you have gas or not. Other states don't. One of the important factors of why it's important for acquisitions to bring in property management is because it's our job to know those codes. It's our job when we sign that property management agreement to make decisions that keep our owners and investors from getting sued. To give you something real life on a 100% unit by unit inspection, I'll give you two things, and these are extreme, but because when you own and manage apartments, you essentially are managing a small city, anything that happens in a city will happen here. Fire, flood, blood, anything will happen. So one time we were doing a unit by unit inspection in Indiana, and we found in the living room that somebody had built an entire room out of plywood, had a door, and had a padlock on it, okay, in the middle of the living room. Of course, we're going, this isn't probably a good thing. Let's figure out who's hiding in there and who they've got locked. Well, we brought in bolt cutters, and it turned out that this resident was renting that space out as a room to a renter, not allowed by the lease. Another time in Little Rock, Arkansas, this was not a RREAF Holdings property, I do want to say that. My team was walking, and I should have put a picture in here, and on the carpet there is an outline of a body. This outline was there because when you die, over time, your body loses all of its fluid, okay? In this case, this woman had passed away on her floor. Unfortunately, when the office team was contacted by a resident who had an odor that they could not figure out, the office team never went and checked. Almost 3 weeks went by. The resident came in and said, I cannot stay in my apartment. The smell is so bad, I don't know what it is. They went, looked, and found this lady who had been dead. That is why it's so important for you to have a property management team that actually cares. Our teams will do 100% lease audit. That tells us, and we look at what the residents make, where they work, how many residents are in each apartment, should they have been approved to move in or not. All of that information is taken, put into a report, and helps the acquisitions team determine how much can we raise rent, who is our resident base, what is our delinquency, how long will it take us to turn it around. All of that comes from doing these simple steps that we take a team in there and we do in a period of 3 to 5 days. All of the documents you see here are numbers, and the reason that it's important to know the numbers is because I can go through and read a financial statement or a T12, and I can pretty much tell you what has happened on that property in that past 12 months. I can tell you where they've probably been short-staffed, what kind of problems they're having, how many leaks they're having, how much are they spending in wet vac. All of these things tell you how to budget for the future. But you've got to know where to dig in and ask the questions. This is about inspecting what you expect. This is why when I go in and I walk an apartment and look at it to see if it's rent ready, I actually will stand in the bathtub. People laugh, but like I said, I treat these as though I'm the owner. The reason I stand in the bathtub is because clean is free. I want our homes to be clean. Just imagine, you've been hot and sweaty. You've been moving all day, moving in boxes. All you want is a pizza, a cold beer, and to stand and take a hot shower. You stand in that shower, you look up, and if you see a shower head that has corrosion on it, an odd color, it kind of ruins the whole day. That's why I stand in the shower, is because I want to know that my team thought enough about our residents that they cared to make sure that it was right and it was clean. We've talked about a lot of this already. How do we make money for investors? We're focusing on ensuring that our performance, every bit of the performance, not just collecting the rent, is done well. That means we hire the right people. Sometimes that means you pay more to hire the right person because you get the skill set that is going to make that difference. If you hire the lowest paid person, then you might get somebody that you have to train. You have to ask yourself, do I have time to train you and achieve the business plan? The same manager that I might put on a brand new asset likely won't be the same manager I would put on a 400 unit asset where we're spending $9 million in renovations. Those are two different skill sets. So you've got to know your business. We will always hold regular review and meetings. For property management, we report to asset management. They're the ones that dictate what the business plan is. We report monthly, we report weekly, and when I have underperforming assets that are, say, under 92% occupied or under 90% economic, I have them doing a daily report that they have to write out versus just pulling out of the computer, because I want them to know their numbers. We track every piece of traffic that walks in the door. We track every move in, every move out. We make smart decisions that are included in this. We, for example, will take and look at every application to make sure that they fully qualify. We're going to look at hiring the right people. We're going to look at where we're spending money and is it the right place. When I think of thinking forward, I tell my team that you're not just to manage today. We have to be strategic in our thought. So my role as CEO is to be thinking strategically what's going to happen to these assets over the next 12 months. What do I have to do to get our teams on board in the 90 days? What do we do for 6 months? What do we do for 12? By position, I want my community managers, the one that is the CEO of the community, is how we tell them to think about it, because we want them to think like owners. We want them to be thinking about that next 60 to 90 days, looking ahead for lease expirations, looking ahead at occupancy. Let me tell you what, our months go from the 1st to the 30th. By the 15th of the month, they better already be thinking on July 15th that they are spending August money, because this month is already halfway gone. So what they're doing today impacts August. They have to think ahead. My directors of operations who have a portfolio need to be thinking 3 to 6 months. They need to be looking far enough ahead that they're already today saying, wait a minute, leasing season typically slows at the end of September. If I'm at 85 today, how many more move-ins is it going to take me to stay above 90 as we go into October? For me, thinking forward, I had Marissa a couple of months ago, take and lock in all of our expirations so that no lease, no more than 3% of our leases can expire in November, December, and January. On some assets, 5%, because those are our slow months and people will move out. For some reason, they never move in as fast as they move out. I thought strategically and had Marissa lock down the computers so that our leases do not expire on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. The reason? Because of vacancy loss. An average day's vacancy loss on a community for us is going to be somewhere around $37, $38. Every single day that an apartment sits vacant, and if I have 900 of them vacant, that means I've got 900 times $38 per day that I'm losing because we didn't have somebody living there. So I know that my site teams are not going to be making apartments rent ready. They're not going to typically be punching or painting or cleaning on a Saturday or Sunday. So if I allow somebody to move out, I've got 3 days of vacancy loss right there that I cannot change, right? Because they're obviously not going to be working on it. So I had her lock it down where our leases don't expire on that day. That means residents will pay us for that weekend and then turn in their keys on a Monday. That's what you have to be thinking forward. These are 5 key words. You want to manage your business. You want to really lead your people and lead the business plan execution. It does not happen, and your site teams will not necessarily drive execution if there's no one guiding them. And the reason for that, they are not sitting in an office like you are. So there are all kinds of times that our team is sitting here, and whether it's an asset manager, an acquisition, accountant, somebody calls and they want something right now. Well, my team in the field lives in the real world, okay? They're not in a desk. They have residents walking in constantly who are needing 5 minutes of their time, or they need to pick up a package. And every time they pick up a package, that package is going to cost me about 12 minutes of one of my leasing people's time, because my team has to touch that package when the UPS person drops it off, put it in the closet, okay, log it in. Our team then, when the resident calls and says, hey, did my package come? They have to get up, go look at it, come talk to the resident. Then after that, the resident comes to pick up the package. They've gone in there again. So they've touched that package 3 or 4 times, and I've lost 12 minutes. So that's why we're gonna look at putting in package lockers or something else. My point is, even what you think is the smallest, most minute item will cost your owner money. And it's up to each one of you as our future leaders to figure out how to make it better. You're gonna drive revenue, you're gonna exceed all the expectations, but you want to always be impeccable with your word. Everybody write this down, the 4 agreements. The 4 Agreements is a book that if you've never read it, you should. One of the guides is to be impeccable with your word. By being impeccable with your word, and that means truly doing what you say you will, when you say you will be recognized and you will become the leader you want to be. If you ever have an executive coach, that's a book they'll probably ask you to read. We know people perceptions matter. A resident or a customer, they know what they see. They know your on-site team. You are starting to make your customer base and your future resident base when they drive by that community on the road and they're not even looking for an apartment home, because that's when they see your curb appeal and they think whether or not it looks nice. So don't think that the cars in the parking lot don't matter, because they do. Don't think that if you haven't pressure washed your building, it doesn't matter, because it does. It's a first impression. It does not make you look like the leader you are. And so you want to put your best foot forward when you're going out into the job world. You need to dress and act for the position you want, not the position you have. And I tell my team that because the on-site team is the only thing the resident knows about our company. So if I hire poorly and my on-site team looks disheveled or doesn't know the answer, then the resident is going to perceive that of RR Living and RREAF Holdings. So I always ask you to think, you're going to write a check for, say, $25,000 a year you're giving for your rent. Are you going to walk into a McDonald's or a Walmart and give that cashier that check for $15,000 or $25,000 without ever knowing them? Probably not. But when you come into one of my apartment communities, I'm asking my team to get you to agree to give us $25,000. So my team needs to look professional enough, the property needs to be looking good in order for that resident to be comfortable giving us that check. And the same goes with whatever field you decide to go into. Don't ever forget that first impressions matter. Confidence matters, even when you're scared. As you want to do this, you want to anticipate the unexpected. This week, I was doing tours with Jack, Tony, and we were out in the field and we had some emergencies pop up. You know, whether it is a fire on a community that happens and you don't get to choose when, how we react and how quickly we handle it is part of our success. Whether we have ICE show up on the properties, how our teams know not to give out information if they don't have a subpoena or they don't have a warrant, or when Mrs. Jones puts her foot on the gas and drives right through the building. These things happen regularly. On any given day with our 15,000 apartments, I probably get 8 to 10 incident reports of things that have happened. Like I said, if it happens in a city, it will happen here. So anticipate the unexpected because it will happen. We are required to make the proactive decisions before a problem becomes a problem. And what do you want? How do you build that sense of residents wanting to pay you more money? We talked about first impressions. That's where all of this is. Your residents want to live somewhere that they are going to be proud to invite their friends and family over. They don't want to say, oh no, you can't come to my house because, geez, all the buildings have tarps on the roof. I don't want you to see it. That's not what we want. That's not who we are as owners or managers. Your team should always know the residents by name, and they should greet them by name. The move-in experience. If you've never gone and shopped an apartment community and said, I want to look for an apartment, even if you're not, I have urged you to do it. It's a very fun exercise, and do a couple of them and notice the differences, because what you're going to see is whether or not things are clean, whether or not they're taken care of, who tries to sell you, who doesn't. You decide where you want to live and work, and you'll see how you want to be treated. When somebody comes in and they move in, if they move in and that move-in day, their apartment home is dirty or has dead bugs or something like that, then their move-in is not good. They don't feel good about it. We want them to feel special. So some of our teams will put a big red bow on their front door. Others will have them take pictures with this big key that says, I got my key, or I said yes to the apartment, or something. You want to make it fun. But if they have a bad move-in experience, if they come to move in and that home is not ready, there is a 54% greater chance that they will not renew their lease. That's important because if they don't renew their lease, every time somebody moves out, the minimum it is going to cost us is about $3,000 because you're probably going to pay $1,000 to $1,200 to paint. You have to replace some of the flooring. You're going to have to pay somebody to clean it. You have man hours from your team having to go in and make sure everything works. All of these things add up, and then you have that $38 a day in vacancy loss. By the end of the day, when you've spent marketing money, maintenance money, vacancy, you've spent about $3,000. That $3,000 has effectively reduced your rent by guess what? Anybody know? $250 a month. So if you're getting $1,250 a month for that apartment, you really are getting $1,000. So we want everybody to stay longer term because then you're spending less on your expenses, which drives your value up because it drives the income up. I'll let you figure out if you take that money and you do it on a cap rate, what the value is. Reliability, that is your brand promise. We want RR Living to be known as a company that helps build a sense of community. We want our residents to think we're going to do what we say we will when we said we would. We want them to feel comfortable with that when they live with us, they're living with somebody that cares. That means I want the amenities to work all the time. Nobody wants to go to the gym or get all 4 kids ready to go swimming, get to the pool only to find out it's closed. All of those things matter. That's what we call the resident experience. The resident experience leads in to whether or not your residents decide they want to renew or they want to leave. That starts before they ever move in. Their mind is being influenced and swayed. So you don't want to forget that. Everything works or it doesn't. Your move-in was good or it's bad. Is it easy for me to live here? Do I feel like you communicate? And all that starts from the very beginning in the pre-acquisition. Early in the pre-acquisition, we will have decided that we want to put washers and dryers in every home because we don't want residents doing it for us. We will have decided that we want to replace 40% of the air conditioners because they're original, and we don't want extra calls for our residents having to be hot. What happens after that is you're out there, you're the one that at some point is going to be leading a company. You're the one that's going to be out there being the person that walks and talks and thinks about it. You're going to one day find yourself potentially telling a Kip Souden, we believe we should buy this asset, or I feel like we should pass on this asset, or here's who I recommend as a property manager. You're going to do that. You're already going to know how to build a plan because you're going to know your demographics. You're going to know what your residents want. You're going to know what will they pay you for and what won't they? Not only that, you're going to be one thinking of new ideas that we've never thought of before because you're our future leaders. You're going to be the decider. You're going to be the one making the money. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. That wraps up our session on closing management. We hope that you have walked away with a better understanding of property management's crucial role in both residential and commercial real estate. If you have any questions, or if you want to dig deeper into anything we covered, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And for those viewing online, make sure to check out the rest of our lectures on RREAF Academy. It's a series of more videos that you do not want to miss. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.